Hey guys, welcome to week 10, Mongols and Turks in Africa. We're going to have a great week because frankly, when you are the largest empire in the world and you conquer the most territory and you kill people in the most creative ways, it makes for a great week. So let's get started. Now, the Mongols are originally nomadic society, which means nomads, which you've probably heard before, means they move and follow the herds. Now, the big reason why they're traveling around and following the herds is because there's not much rainfall, so there's not much irrigation. No irrigation means no farms. No farms mean no large-scale crops. So the only way to stay fed and to stay healthy and all that, you need to follow animal herding. So we use animals for both food, clothing, and shelter, and we're also going to have a lot of migratory. When it's too cold up north, you have to travel south with the herds, just like normal patterns and all that stuff. We are going to have some small-scale farming, but not too much. Now, this is what nomads in Turkmenistan, which no longer exist, look like forever ago. And you can see the animal huts. Animal hides are what is used to make the huts. Now, the nomadic economy is going to be all about caravans. We're going to already have the foundation of the Silk Road, which is traveling goods from Asia to Europe, via Muslims across the road, across the Silk Road, and then using the Mediterranean Sea to travel from the Italians to buy it from the Muslims and then turn around and sell it to the Europeans. Now, the nomads are going to be the ones who are going to be making this route more commonly. Now, in this nomadic societies, it's typically clan-based. The more charismatic you are, the more popular you are, the more likely you are to rise into a position of power. When you are in a position of power, you're considered a noble. Once a noble does not mean you'll always be a noble. One of the big things about steep government or steep government relations is that you rise to power mostly by killing people, which is pretty cool. Now, there is a lot of fluidity in becoming a noble. Just because your father's noble does not mean you'll be a noble. And it really is based on your ability to follow through and do things. You will advance faster by having strong merits. If you're lazy, you're gonna fall out of it. Now, the interesting things about these nomadic situation is that it is probably one of the best situations for women. Women are going to have probably the most influence of any of the time period going on. They are going to be advisors and occasionally regents or rulers. Now, religion is also going to be a huge thing with these nomads. You're going to have shamans who are going to do a pagan worship, which is when they are focusing on the land and the air and all that stuff and trying to understand the world. You're going to have some Buddhism because, like I said, they are going to travel on the Silk Road. So Buddhism, some Christianity, some Islam, all of those components are going to be a big part of it. You're also going to have a lot of Islam. Once the Silk Road really gets up and going, Islam is going to be the fastest spreading religion on the Silk Road, and it makes sense that they would be a part of it. Now, when we talk about the military structures, we're going to have a lot of khans. Large confederations are going to use khans. Now, they are going to be based on tribal elders. They are going to be controlled by the tribal elders. And they're also going to have a lot of strong cavalries. And these strong cavalries are going to cavalries are made up out of horses, and the riding with so many horses is going to allow the mobility, speed, all these different types of things. Now, the Turkish empires and their neighbors are going to expand through all this territory, which is a huge component of land, which is only going to be larger by eventually the Mongols. Now, the Seljuk Turks and the Abbasid Empire are going to start. Now, we're going to start seeing that eventually the Turkish people are going to dominate the Abbasid caliphs. We're going to start seeing that Abbasid caliphs are going to serve as figureheads of authority. Now, keep in mind, a caliph is kind of like a pope of the Catholic Church. They're going to be the dominant rulers. Now, the Turks in the Byzantine Empire, you're going to see the Turks are going to defeat the Byzantine army, and they're going to take the emperor captive. We're going to have a large-scale invasion of Anatolia and a ton of conversions to Islam. Now, the Ottoman Turks are then going to conquer Constantinople, which is the busiest trade city in the world at this point, and the fall of the Byzantines is official in 1453 and the rise of the Turks. Now, once the Turks are in power, we're going to see that they're going to invade northern India, which we talked to Muhammad of Ghaznavid. We're also going to start seeing that they're just doing it for wealth and riches. Eventually, they'll do it to rule. Now, northern India is going to be controlled by the Muslims, as we've discussed, and we're going to see a lot of persecution of Buddhists and Hindus. So in northern India, it's very Muslim-based. We're going to see this is going to make southern India very Hinduist. Now, Genghis Khan, it's spelled Chinggis, also known as Genghis, Genghis, in the Mongol Empire. Now, his father is poisoned in 1177, and he's going to be forced into poverty at this point. Now, he's going to master steppe diplomacy, which means he knows how to kill people, how to manipulate people, and how to rise into power, because he's a very charismatic leader. He's also a hard worker, which is everything you need to be in order to rise in power in the Mongol Empire. Now, he's going to bring the Mongols all into under one tribe, and he's going to eventually be called the Genghis Khan, or the universal leader of all Mongols. Now, once everyone is unified, we have a new political organization. Now, it's going to break up the tribal organization and form military unions based on men from different tribes. So we're going to see a blending of culture. We're also going to see the promotion of people based on merit and not by name, which is something that's going to allow their government as well as military to thrive. And they're going to establish a new capital in Karakoram. Now, once the Mongols are starting to really organize themselves, it's important to know that the entire Mongol population is less than 1% of the Chinese population. This is important because the Mongols are going to take over the China. That's how effective they are via military. That is how effective they are doing everything. Now, the reason why they're so effective military-wise is because they have the cavalry, the horses, which makes them very effective warriors. They have short bows, which allows them to fire quickly in short range. And they're also going to reward enemies that surrender and cruel to enemies that fight. So they're going to be, they're going to have a reputation. If you give up, well, life's better. If you fight, it's going to be harder. Now, the Mongol conquest is going to start in China in 1220. They're also going to conquest Afghanistan as well as Persia. We're also going to see that anyone who fights back is going to be destroyed completely. Now, every time they take over, they completely ravage the land. Anytime anyone tries to fight back, they try to take over it completely. They do large-scale and long-term devastations. They burn the land, burn the houses, do crazy things in order to suppress. Very effective, not very nice. So the Mongolian Empire is going to be broken up into 4 major sections. And these 4 sections are going to create the largest empire in the world. Now, the largest empire is then going to be inherited by Kublai Khan, who is the grandson of Genghis Khan. He's going to rule China. Now, keep in mind, the Mongolian Empire is divided into 5 sections. Each of these 5 sections need to be learned and what they have influence on and what they control. Now, Kublai Khan is going to take over China. He's very ruthless. However, he is very religiously tolerant, which is interesting. Now, he's going to host Marco Polo and the Yuan dynasty. However, he is going to try to take over Vietnam, Cambodia, and Burma. It's going to be a failure. And he's also going to try to take over Japan, and that's going to fail because of the divine winds, because of typhoons. Now, the Golden Horde is the conquest of Russia. Very effective. They're going to take Russia during the winter, and they establish a tributary relationship, which means the Russian Empire has to pay tributary to China. They're also going to start attacking Poland, Hungary, and Germany. Now, they're only doing it to create wealth and terrorize. They're not doing it to conquer territory so much, but it does mean that the Mongols do touch Europe. Now, the Ilkhanate of Persia, it's going to mean the Abbasid Empire is completely toppled. We're going to see that Baghdad is going to be sacked and 200,000 people are massacred. Now, keep in mind, they wanted the city, not the people. They don't want to control the people. They want to control the city and its trading controls. Now, they're eventually going to expand into Syria, but however, they're going to be stopped in Egypt. Egypt's going to fight back and be able to defend their borders. Now, in Persia, we're going to see that they're going to start having sedentary people start being... we're going to start seeing massive traders become sedentary people, and that's going to be a huge loss of control of land. In Persia, there's going to dependence on existing administration. So we're going to see a lot of people depending on taxes, for instance. And this bureaucracy is going to cause a lot of problems. Eventually, the Mongolian ways are going to dissimulate into Islamic lifestyles. Now, in China, there's going to be a huge impact due to the Mongols. They're going to try to create strict separation. If you're a Mongolian, you're Mongolian. If you're Chinese, you're Chinese. You're not allowed to marry. You're also not allowed to learn the language if you're Chinese, because they believed that they are 1% of the population and they are the most powerful. We're going to see that they're going to bring administrators into China from other parts of the world in order to keep them from dealing with them on a regular basis. But the weirdest thing is that they are religious freedoms. They're allowed to practice whatever religions. Now, the Mongols' viewpoint on Buddhism is they're going to allow it. Now, shamanism or paganism is going to be the most popular. We're going to see some Buddhism is going to be favored by some of the Mongols, mostly because there's magic, to be quite honest. However, they are showing some of the cons as incarnations of Buddhists. So we're going to see that some of this is going to become popular again. Now, the Mongols in the Western integration, there's going to be some long-distance trade. They're going to be protecting traveling merchants. Now, the Mongols aren't known for their trade, but they are known for protecting traders. They're going to make sure that the Silk Road is protected and safe, so that allows trade to just explode. Now, the volume of trade across Asia is going to increase significantly, and this means more goods are getting to Asia, and more goods are going to Europe. We're also going to have diplomatic missions are going to be protected, which means it's safer to travel for the first time. Missionary, so Christians, Jews, Muslims, and everything else in between is going to be protected as well. And we're going to have people being moved in and out. Now, the decline of the Persian Mongolian Empire is going to happen because of overspending. They just spend so much money trying to manipulate and use Islamic ways. They're also going to have poor tax returns from overburdened peasantry, which means they're taxing too much. Now, we're going to start seeing that they're going to replace metal with paper in order to try to compensate for some of this. However, it's going to fail, and eventually they're going to have to say, okay, we take it back. I'm so sorry. We're going to have a lot of fractional fighting, which means some people are going to follow one guy, some people are going to follow another guy, and we're also going to have the last and final Ilkhanate is going to fall with no heir, which means there's no clear line of continuing. Now, the decline of the Yuan dynasty in China, because the Mongols spend billion that is supported by paper currency, people lose confidence in paper money. The prices rise. No one really feels confident with paper money until about the 1800s. That's when we start seeing paper money starting to really catch on. The Mongols start with it, trying to get it going, because it's easier to do. However, most people don't really trust it, and it's going to be a huge problem. There's going to be major power struggles. The bubonic plague is going to start during this time as well. And the Mongols flee peasant rebellions. It's going to be a huge problem for them. Now, the surviving Mongol khanates, now in Central Asia, they're going to still exist. The Golden Horde in Caucasus and steppes in mid-century is going to continue to overthrow Russia, which is why Russia is going to be very unique for quite some time. The Russian one is going to continue the longest. The Chinese is going to fall, and the Persians are going to fall, but the Central Asia and the Russians are going to continue for quite some time. Now, once the Persian Mongol Empire falls, we're going to see that the Tamerlane the Conqueror comes in. He's a Turkish conqueror, and he's going to unify all the Turkish nomads against the Mongols, and they're eventually going to create the capital of Samarkand. Now, Tamerlane's heirs are going to provide very poor organization, they're going to divide the empire amongst them, four of them, and they're going to be heavily influenced by the Mughal, Safavid, and Ottoman Empire, which is a good thing and not, but they're going to be heavily influenced. Now, the Ottoman Empire is going to rise because of a charismatic leader, Osman, and he's going to declare independence from the Saljuq Sultan, and he's going to continue to attack the Byzantines. Now, the Ottomans are going to take over the Balkans. They have local support because the peasants are unhappy with the Byzantines. And we're going to see that Tamerlane is going to defeat the Ottomans in 1402, but the Ottomans are recovered by the 1450s. Now, Sultan Mehmed II is going to capture Constantinople in 1453 and rename it Istanbul, and this will be the official capital of the Ottoman Empire. So that is everything going on in Europe this week. Let's get to Africa, shall we? Now, in Africa, we're going to start seeing a lot of migrations. Now, the Bantu-speaking people are going to start settling south of the equator, which means they're going to be settling the southern tip. Agriculture, herding is going to increase, and iron metallurgy is also going to happen. We also have bananas. Now, bananas seem kind of to us like, oh, what a great little snack. But bananas is a huge focus. Now, bananas are going to be domesticated in Southeast Asia, and the Malay sailors are going to colonize Madagascar, and this is going to introduce bananas, yams, and chickens to the continent of Africa. Now, it's going to be well adapted to African life, and it's also going to be a huge food crop, which means people in Africa are depending on bananas, which is pretty cool. Now, once bananas get introduced to Africa, we're going to see a huge population growth because of all the nutrients that it does hold. Now, when we think about African society, we have to keep in mind kin-based societies. They are stateless, segmented societies. There's no elaborate hierarchies like in feudalism. We have a king, then we have a lord, then we have knights. All those are super structured. In Africa, it's not. Now, the average population of a village is only about 100, while the average population of a European village is about 2,000, 3,000. So you're going to see that they're much smaller. They're going to be ruled by elders, sometimes an elder council. And we're also going to see a network of villages resolve disputes. Okay, they're going to work together. And the higher government authorities are rare. Anyone who is above anyone is very weird. Now, chiefdoms are going to start arising once there's an increase of competition. Now, small chiefdoms appear, overrule kin-based groups. We're going to see one person becomes in charge. Small kingdoms form an from the end, but I won't worry about that. Now, here we go as the small empires are going to start to rise. Now, one of the big first ones is the Kingdom of Congo. Now, the Kingdom of Congo is located along the Congo River. Zaire River is if you go there today. And now, it's several villages start the alliance together, and they are mostly coming together in order to increase trade. Now, it is mostly centralized rule of the Bantu kingdoms, and they use cowries, which are cowrie shells. They look like the little, you've seen cowrie. They have the little shells that people put like ribbon through and stuff like that. Now, they ruled 4th to 17th century until undermined by Portuguese slave traders, which we're going to get to a little bit later on. Now, the Islamic kingdoms and empires. Now, Islam is going to spread into West Africa via the Trans-Saharan caravans and coastal Africa through maritime trade. So the Islam is going to be the most commonly traded religion that is going to have a huge influence. Now, what we're going to see with the Trans-Saharan trade, we're going to see the dissection of the Saharan begins. We're going to start having people trying to conquer parts of the Saharan desert in order to control trade. It takes about 70 to 90 days to cross the Saharan desert, and we're also going to see that the Arabs are going to try crossing in on a regular basis, not just Africans. Now, one of the first major kingdoms is called the Kingdom of Ghana. Now, they are not related to the modern state of Ghana. However, they do develop between the 4th and the 5th century. Now, they are going to protect against camel-driving raiders, which means they're going to be protecting, making sure trade is ensured. They are the center of African gold trade and also sold ivory and slaves. So their largest export is going to be gold, but also ivory and slaves. Now, Kombatili, the capital of the Kingdom of Ghana. It's the major trading center and is the high point of the 12th century, and it's also going to be the military and cultural center for the Kingdom of Ghana. Now, the Kingdom of Ghana is going to convert to Islam in the late 10th century in order to become more popular among the Arabs. You're also going to see a positive because of this, because their Islamic roots now, they become more popular in trade and relations with North Africa. They're going to synthesize Islam with local traditions. So they're going to pull classic African traditions and Islam together. Now, one of the most famous kingdoms is Malay, and the most famous leader is going to be Sundita. Now, Sundita is going to create the Empire of Malay, which is going to extend over the Kingdom of Ghana and a lot of other kingdoms as well. They're going to take great advantage of the Trans-Saharan trade. He's going to be Islamic. He is a Muslim, but does not force conversions. He's all about, if you are Muslim, fantastic, life will be easier. If you're not, you're fine. Now, his grandnephew, Mansa Musa, is a fervent Muslim, and he is dedicated to Islam. Now, he's going to perform his Hajj in 1324, and he is going to build numerous mosques as well as support Muslim scholar. Now, when he travels from Africa to Mecca in order to go on his Hajj, he's going to decrease the amount of gold there is in the world because he's giving out so much gold, which is pretty cool. I mean, to have that much gold. Because of him giving out so much gold, it is actually going to hurt Africa because people are going to be like, oh my God, Africa, clearly there's a lot going on. Now, when we talk about Indian Ocean trade in Islamic states, East Coast maritime trade is weak until 2nd century. Now, the Bantu peoples are going to populate the coast. They're called Swahili coasters, which engage in trade with the Arabs. The language, a form of Bantu, is influenced by Arabic, and we're going to see by the 10th century, trade is going to increase. Now, these Swahili city-states are going to have great wealth for most of the time. They're going to develop into city-states, and they're going to have a lot of architecture is going to move from wood and mud to coral and stone. You're going to see a lot of Chinese silk and porcelain being imported. And one of the most important Swahili states is going to be Kilwa. Now, Kilwa is a city-state on the African east coast, and their focus is fishing and limited trade. However, they do turn to agriculture, which is very unique, and increase trade in pottery and stoneware. So they're going to see a ton of gold going through these ports as well. Zimbabwe, also known as the dwelling of the chief, and it's about, they make a massive stone complex in honor of the great Zambwe, and they're going to be a major trade internal in coastal regions. Now in East Africa, we're also going to see rise of Islam. That we're going to have a lot of ruling elites in East Africa accept Islam without forcing on the general population, which means kings and nobles are converting, but they're not forcing their people. Now, they often retain pagan religious traditions and practices because of the culture. However, Islam serves as a social glue, which means merchants and other generals who deal with it are going to become Islamic. Other influences are going to be social structures on the societies. There's a ruling class, there's a merchant class, and there's a peasant class pretty much all throughout Africa. Now, in sub-Saharan Africa, continue to use kin-based groups. So in Northern Africa, you're going to see a lot of political classes, a lot of structure. Southern is going to be mostly kin-based. Now, these kin-based groups are going to be clans. They lead to private property. They're going to have handheld communal society, and they're going to have harvest, which means the leaders are going to divide up all the food. Now, when we talk about sex and gender relations, men are working with specialized skills, the tanning, the iron, the heavy labor. Both sexes are both going to work on agriculture. If men are doing the tanning and the ironwork, women are going to be in the fields. Now, males' rule was more common. However, there are some women who are involved. Merchants and military activity, we're going to start seeing the Africans are going to really start adopting some Islamic rule. Now, age grades is when during certain ages they have certain types of responsibility, and that's going to be very much so common. Now, slavery is going to be practiced since ancient times. Most slave captives of war are debtors, suspected witches, or criminals. We're going to see that it is really going to challenge the foundations of Africa, and it's going to continue to do that. Now, slaves are going to be used by Africans, and there are other Africans, and it's going to be used primarily for agricultural reasons. And the more slaves you had showed the more wealth you had and the higher social status you had. Now, slave trading is going to increase in the Trans-Saharan and the Indian Ocean trade, and this is going to get people going there pretty quickly. Now, Africa is going to replace Eastern Europe as principal source of slaves. So instead of going to going to Russia and getting slaves, you're going to just go to Africa. And this creates an internal slave trade, which means Africans are taking other Africans to become their slaves, which is pretty strange to think of how terrible that is. Now, the Zanj Revolt, is slaves from Swahili coast are exported to work in Mesopotamia to do sugarcane, to do salt deposits, and Ali bin Muhammad is going to create a revolt of about 15,000 slaves, and he is going to capture a major trading city in Basra, and it's later going to be crushed by the Abbasids, which is a big deal. Now, the African religions, there's going to be a huge difference here. The common element is a single male creator god. You're going to see a lot of ancestor worships, diviners or religious specialists, oracle readings, spells, and other rituals are going to be a big part of it. But there's going to be a limited emphasis on theology. There's not much written down. It's mostly morality based on nature important. So the better you are to nature, the more likely you are to be okay. Now, Christianity is going to play a major role. It's going to play a small role, not a major role. Now, the first century, Christianity is going to be popular in Egypt and North Africa and very weak in Sub-Saharan. However, the Kingdom of Aksum is actually going to be Christian, which it's located in modern-day Ethiopia. They use merchants and start the Christians, and then the kings are eventually going to convert. They translate the Bible in order to suit, and they also are going to have a renaissance during the 12th century, and they're going to start having massive churches carved out of rock, which is pretty cool. They create major obelisks and all that stuff. Now, Ethiopian Christianity is in isolation for other Christian areas until the 16th century. They're not in communication, so it develops very uniquely. We're going to see a lot of spiritual and amulets. It's going to be really completely different from Christianity of like the Roman Church or anything like that. Anyway, guys, that is all for this week. I wish you luck and can't wait to hear of your success. Anyway, have a great week.